So now I want to develop a game result component that will show the results of the previous games of that particular user. So let's create a new Aura component and we are going to call it as game result. In this component we are going to use the out of the box Lightning Datatable component. So let's view the documentation of that. So here in our component library, search for Datatable, and under this Aura section click on this Lightning Datatable, and this is something that we want to show our game results to the user. So let's scroll down, and this is the component that we want to use. So let's try to understand what is going on in this component. This component has two attributes. One is to store the data and another one to store the columns. So this column attribute defines these columns like the way we are seeing here, these top columns, and this data attribute defines these rows, like what kind of data should go inside these columns. Apart from that, this has an out of the box Lightning Datatable component where we are passing these columns and data values. Now it also has an init handler. Now in this init method they are building their columns because it is always guaranteed that this init method will be called and we will always have our columns data here. And then within this init method itself they are getting their data as well, and that's what we will also do. So let's copy everything from here. Let's paste it here. First I'm going to remove this mock data library because we are not going to use it. Here let's name our action to do in it, and then I'm going to have a new lightning card and I'm going to name it as your results. And within this lightning card I'm going to have my lightning data table. So let's copy this one from here. Maybe like I have a div tag and I'm going to have an out of the box SLDS class to give a nice padding around my lightning data table. So let's use where p here defines the padding, and I'm going to use around medium, and then we can copy our lightning data table. Let's remove everything else. Let's make sure that we are closing our Aura component. So this is how our component looks like. We have data, we have columns, and we are using the lightning data table as well. Now let's define our doInit method. So let's go to the controller file, and here in this doInit method, first we are going to construct the columns. So I'm going to have a new variable here. Let's name it as columns, and this will be an array of objects, and we are going to follow this similar syntax. If you want to read more about this data table and how these columns are generated, then you can go inside the documentation where they clearly mention each and everything about these columns properties, like what does this label mean, what is the field name, what is the type, and everything. I'll also explain it to you while we will be building our own columns. So for now let's copy this data from here, at least one single column. So this will be the first item of our columns array, and here I want to give this column name as game number. So the label here defines the text that will appear on the top. Then the field name defines the actual API name of the field. So here our number will come from the game result object's name field. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So our number is stored in this name field. So we need to copy the API name. And the type of this field is text. So we'll leave it as is. Now we are going to copy it 3 more times. In the second column we are going to show the game mode. The field name should be, I think, mode_C, and the type should be text. Then I'm going to store one more column here. let's name it as played on, and this should be created date, which is a standard field, and the type should be date, and the last one should be the result, and this should be result _c, and the type should be text. And now we can store these columns inside our column attribute. Okay, so that's it. Now next step would be to create an Apex method to retrieve our previous game's result, and within that Apex method we are going to use our SQL query to fetch all the records from this word shuffle object. So let's create a new Apex class. Let's name it as game result controller. Let's create a new Aura enabled method here, and this method is going to return a list of word shuffle object records, and let's name our method as get results. Here first we are going to get the current user's ID, because we do not want to show all the previous game's result to every user. We only want to show the result of that particular user who is viewing it. So here we can simply get the current user's user ID using the user info class, which is a standard class in each and every Salesforce org, and it also has a method which is called get user ID, and this method is going to give me the current user's user ID. And then we are going to build an SQL query. So it will be like list of word shuffle. Let's name it as results. And then we are going to write our SQL query. So we are getting ID, name, result, mode, and created date from our word shuffle object, where the created by ID is equals to this user, so that we'll only fetch that particular user's record, and we are going to order it by the created date in descending order, so that we will show the most recent result on the top. And now we can simply return these results. Awesome. Now we'll do the same thing that we have done in our previous video as well. First we are going to define a controller attribute, and let's associate this component with game result controller. Let's also make our component available for our app builder pages. So we need to implement this interface. The next step would be to call this Apex method, and we are going to do that from our helper file. I'm going to name this method as fetch result. This is going to accept a component variable, and here we are going to fetch our results from the Apex method. So first we need to get our action, which should be this one. Then we need to set the parameters, but this method doesn't accept any parameters, and delete this line. After that we need to set the callback function, and here if the callback is success, then we are going to get the return value using this get return value method. So here we'll get all our previous results array that we are returning from this Apex method. So this list will be available to us here on this line. Now all that left is to set this result inside our data attribute, which is this one. So let's set our attribute value. Awesome. So let's call this function from our controller file here. So once we set our columns, now we also want to get the previous results. Now let's deploy everything to our Salesforce org and hopefully this should work. If you feel that we are going fast with the Aura component framework, or if we are not covering all the things, that's because this course is primarily designed for the Apex development, and in future if I'll get more time then I'll add more modules in this Aura framework development section. But for now I have given you all the fundamentals of Aura framework and you should be able to create your own custom components and deploy those. So let's open the edit page because we are going to add our game result component here. So simply drag and drop your game result component, and I think we have got an error. We'll solve it once we see it on our home page. Okay, I know the reason why it's not working, and that's because inside this fetch result function we are not passing this component variable, which we need to do. Awesome. So it seems our code is working and we see our game results. Let's play one more game and we have won, but our result is not refreshing. So for that we need to handle our application event that can indicate that we have played another game and reload these results from server. We already have an application event defined. We just need to handle that event inside our game result component as well. Because right now what it is doing, it is loading these results in the init method, which is only called at the time of component initialization. Once you get this result for the first time, there is no way for this component to know that you played another game and it has to load back these results one more time. So let's go back to our VS Code and we are going to handle our application event. I think we were handling that inside the board panel component. So I'm going to copy the same line. I'm going to handle this event inside my game result component as well. And I'm going to define this method. And in this method, I'll simply call my fetch result function again, so that I'll make another server-side call and fetch the latest results from my Apex method. And this should give me the new results as well. So let's deploy this one more time. And hopefully now we will see our results every time we play a new game. Let's play a new game. Okay, so we have lost this game, and if you notice, we have got our results immediately. Perfect. Our word shuffle game is almost complete,